Hey guys, Courtney Mermaid here with part 2 of my tail making tutorial. So to catch up from the last video, just sort of show you guys where I'm at, I have here my tail. It's cut out and basted. It's going to be a little bit hard to see. Unfortunately, I can't have these stupid lights on because they literally shine like ping right at the camera, and then it's all you see is just lens flare like above my head, which is fantastic. You're going to get lots of great info that way. Anyways, but the whole thing has been nicely basted and stitched. At this point, you guys are going to want to try on your tail to make sure that it's actually going to fit you. Basting, that's why you take the extra time to make sure that you do it right, because then you're going to need to try it on, which means you're going to be pulling and tugging on the fabric a little bit. Be careful when you do it. You don't want the whole thing to come apart, and hopefully if you followed my instructions, your tail will have stayed together so that you could actually try it on. And as you can see, my waist stayed nice and intact, and you can scope it out. You're also going to want to test your monofin pocket, make any notes if you're going to need to stitch any closer or if it needs to be tighter. This is the time when you need to make sure that you've done it right, because once you start sewing, it's just a straight shot to the finish line. So yeah, you always want to lay down the good tracks so that when the train gets moving, stuff isn't being derailed everywhere. Okay, so I have here my trusty little, you probably won't see much of my face in this video, so I apologize. Back to the Future shirt for the win! Okay, so here's my trusty little Singer sewing machine. Sewing machines really is a whole other kind of topic. Because this is just fabric, you're not going to need a super industrial sewing machine. I have just a basic system. It's not super fancy. I can actually show you guys my babies. This is my babies. And it's good. There's a couple of things that knowing now how I do things, I probably would have gotten a different machine, but this baby here does some really good stuff. So far as the stitch that you're going to use, you're going to want to use, I know some people will use a zigzag stitch, so that's the one that goes bing, 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 bing. And I use a triple stitch, which is going to be number 1 on my machine. I don't actually know if you guys are going to be able to see. If I get it really, really close, maybe. I don't know if I can make it focus. There we go. So that's that stitch. So basically it goes like 1 forward, or 2 forward, 1 back, 2 forward, 1 back, and so then it allows there to be give, lots of give, well, not lots of give, but give, but it holds. It also eats up a ton of thread, which is fantastic because I actually ran out of my favorite white thread, so I'm actually using a mint lime green for my bobbin thread, and then the regular thread. Now I would show it's a pretty standard on all machines how to wind it all through. When you get your machine, you're going to have an instruction booklet that'll come with it that will explain that kind of stuff to you. So for this, I want to stick with what's specifically mermaid tail making related. Okay, so I start up at the waist when I do this, and it doesn't really matter what side you start on. I'm going to be starting on the, I actually can't remember which is front and back, so on my right side. And it is kind of heavy material if you're using the same spacer stuff that I'm using. And because I don't have a super huge, I'm doing this on my kitchen counter. This is how much space I've got for my tail making. It's awesome. So I put part of it over my shoulder to make this a bit easier. And when I do this, I'm going to sew. Oh, maybe I'll do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to stitch not exactly right over. I'm going to stitch a little teeny bit on the outside. Because you're going to need to actually take out this black thread afterwards, and if you've sewn over top of it with the triple stitch that I'm using, yeah, you're never going to get it out, and it's going to be a nightmare, and you're going to cry, and then you're going to email me crying, and it's going to be good, so don't do that. So just a little bit over. It'll take some practice, and if you haven't used this stitch or even a sewing machine before, I would highly recommend just grab some scraps, whatever you cut away that you didn't need, you don't use, and just give it a couple of runs. Use cheap thread and just give it a go, just to try it out, yeah. So, oh, and also, There's different thicknesses and different kinds of thread. I can't say for sure what the white thread is that I'm using right here because it's not labeled, because it's not the kind of thread I usually get. This is one that I just found. I actually don't even know where it came from. It just appeared. I don't know. Hang on, let me grab... the kind of thread that I usually use is actually polyester, if I'm not mistaken. Here we go. So I usually get... Oh, yeah, it's a little bit hard to see. There you go. In a white, and I usually get the big like spool of it, and it's not super, you can't actually break it. I don't want to do it because I don't want to hurt my hands, but yeah, so don't get the really, really thick stuff, because if you're going to use the triple stitch, you're going to like, well, you're just going to make a mess. So if you're going to use that triple stitch, you're not going to have to get the super, super thick thread. But yeah, I can include with the video what this actually says on it. And you will need more than just this. If you're a big girl like me and you're really tall, I'm almost 5'10"-ish, give or take, I would go through a lot of thread. So be prepared. Don't do what I did and find yourself without thread. Not good. The reason I can use a light color, like it's a light color that I'm using, is because I'm actually painting this tail. So it's going to absorb the paint anyways. So if it's just a light color, and it's also green, so my tail's going to be green and blue, so I figured of all my options, that's going to be the best one. Okay, so let's line this up here. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. It's going to be a little bit just the way that the light is, and then my machine actually has a light on it. And hopefully I'm not covering up my mic. I have no idea where the mic is on my computer, so I'm just going to line it up, and away we go. Okay, so when you do this, you want to be like lightly feeding it through. You're going to have, like, some machines have the little grabber feet. I think most machines do now. The little grabber feet underneath that are going to pull the thread along. Don't sit there and tug on your thread, because you're going to miss stitches, or you're going to make a huge knot like I just did. Yes, I admit it. I actually goofed really badly at the top of my tail. I had a little knot there, but you know what? That's what trusty seam rippers are for. Ding! And then patience is a virtue, of course. So you'll want to periodically check to make sure that your stitching is actually going through on both sides, that you haven't somehow lost your thread, or that your bobbin has run out. I highly recommend that you make sure that you have enough thread and have a full bobbin before you start, because running out midway kind of sucks, and then it kind of makes you, if you're not really good at getting like the lines back together, then your stitch is going to be a little bit off. Now, like, will you notice it? Probably not, but I would know, and that would make me crazy. so I try to be as organized as I can be. So at this point I can check, see that you can actually see. So the nice stitch is here, and then of course my basting is just down below. Okay, so as you approach your ankle / monofin area, you're gonna really want to make sure that for the monofin that you aren't leaving like any extra. That's like, you want to be really close to the line that you made, especially if when you did your test and you put your monofin in, if it was feeling a little bit loose, then you're going to want to be a little bit on the inside, or you're going to want as close to that line as humanly possible, because the monofin area needs to be quite snug. A little bit of give is like, depending on whether or not you're making a tail that is like spandex, like those kids' tails that I've showed, where you're going to have to pull on it to take the monofin out, then it's okay to have a little bit of extra space, because you don't want to stretch the fabric beyond recognition every time you need to take the monofin in and out. But for the kind of tail that I'm making here, where I'm going to actually have a Velcro base with the, what's it called? Vinyl fringe. So I'm going to want this to be just super duper snug, because once the vinyl's on there, like the stretch and elasticity in that area is just gone. So it needs to be the right fit right off the bat. So if you've decided to leave like a fabric fringe, like I have with these guys, Only so until where the monofin is actually going to end. So this is actually the monofin here, and this is where it ends. And the excess fringe, as you can see, just kind of folds in on itself. Kind of like that. I found for me that that's been the best look. Having an extra like sewn bit down the side, I don't know if, for me personally, if I like how that looks. So I usually just sew until the very end. Make sure you back and forth that quite a bit, and then you'll go in and actually sew in the little foot pocket, so that this is one where you can actually take the monofin in and out. So for mine, I'm just going to make it all the way to the end, and then just leave that, because then I have to decide where my vinyl, why am I having a problem with that word today, where my vinyl is going to go, and that's going to determine where I actually cut this off. I've got the halo, but I needed the lights on, it was getting too dark in here. Okay, so side one's done. So, oh, yeah, that's the right side. So all the way along, I've had this nice little stitch. Tried to keep it nice and smooth. I've gone all the way down, all the way around the tail. Just that one side. I'm going to do the other side now. And made it all the way down to the end, like I said. Your fringe could still come a little bit further off if that's what you've planned and you don't sew the rest of the way like I explained before. For me, I just went over a couple of times, made sure that my corner here is going to be nice and secure. Okay, so now I just flip the tail over. The other side going, because I'm going to do it from the same, from the top down. I know this looks probably just ridiculous, right? But I've made a lot of tails. This is my method. You don't have to copy me exactly, but this is just what works for me in the space that I've got. So, yeah, starting again right at the very top. You can also see I did a couple of tests right in the corner there. So even those of us who've made lots of tails like to double and triple check before we dive face first into the wall, you know? Okay, I turned the lights off because you couldn't see me because it's light and stuff. Okay, so I'm done. The main part of the sewing, I will still have to do the waistband, but I'm noticing I only have like a half an hour left before I have to move on to some other stuff that I have to get done. I always have so much to do in the evenings. So for this one, I'm going to just take out the basting now, and that's probably where I'm going to leave it for this video. But I can actually turn my machine off and unplug it. Basting, like ripping out the basting, I would recommend like good lighting. So I'll turn my light on when I do it. You want to make sure that you have a decent seam ripper, that it hasn't like gotten dull or anything. So I've got two, and one's kind of like a cheapy, like crappy one, and this one's my good one. So that's what a seam ripper looks like. Pretty cheap to buy, so pretty good. You know, if you've got kids in your house, or if you are a kid, please get your parents to help you. Or if you're like me and you're just really like clumsy and you step on it or you poke yourself with it, because it's sharp, right? It's a blade. So you're just going to be taking out the black or whatever. I'm hoping you used a dark color if you're using white fabric, because if you used white now, you're going to realize why I said to use a different color. So let me just see if I can move my camera so you can actually maybe possibly kind of sort of see what I'm doing. Cool, you can, I think, I hope. So you just sort of start wherever, because you're going to just be able to pull, if I'd stop pulling the wrong thread, and you're just going to be able to pull out pieces. So you don't have to do every single one. You'll see that I can literally just grab and just pull it and pull. And then a little further down, oh, that one ripped, so now I can just actually pull the fabric out that way, you know? And you just go all the way around. Now, depending on how close you got to your actual stitching, like if I have an example, yeah, here, you'll see I actually stitched like right over top of it, so that's going to be a little bit of a pain. You see how he sticks in there because he's actually sewn down more. So when you do this, be super aware that you're not actually there we go, that you're not actually going to be seam ripping the good thread, the thread that you want to leave in. You don't want to compromise like the integrity of your tail. You know, you don't want to add damage to it already at such a young like stage, right? So here's going to be one where it actually went right through. It's like floss, it actually went right through the fabric, so I'm not sure how I'm going to get that one out, but this is just like guessing and testing and going around. It's more tedious than it is difficult. This will probably be the last of the unfun parts of mermaid tail making. Once the waistband is in, then we get to the really good stuff, like the really heavy-duty creative stuff, like putting in the fringe, you know, and painting and all that good stuff. That's where most of the questions come from, but I wanted to make sure I covered all the bases with this. So I'm just going to finish this off on my own. You guys don't need to watch me do it. You've seen the basic stuff. And yeah, so I look forward to the next video when I get to finish the waistband, which might be a video all by itself. But hopefully you guys are learning something so far. You know, feel free to message me any questions that you have, you know, and I'll be happy to answer those for you. And hopefully I'll just, you know, think ahead and answer them in the next video. I don't know. Anyways, happy swimming, happy tail making, and we will talk to you, or I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.